We begin in Ukraine, where air raid sirens have been sounding across the country as Russia launches a new wave of airstrikes. A spokesperson for the Ukrainian Air Force has warned civilians to take shelter. So far, there is no word on casualties or damage. Russian planes reportedly fired more than 100 missiles targeting key infrastructure in Ukraine. The latest strikes comes just hours after multiple explosions at two military bases deep inside of Russian territory. So let's get more on this now. Following the situation for us is Konstantin Eggert. He is standing by in Vilnius. So what are you hearing about this latest round of attacks in Ukraine?
Well, it is a continuation of Putin's strategy, which is aimed at essentially trying to destroy whatever remains of Ukrainian infrastructure during this winter. And because the Ukrainian energy infrastructure proved to be, well, fairly resilient if you look at the at how fierce the attacks are, then this continues and this will continue. And frankly speaking, I don't think that Putin needs any pretexts anymore. Although the explosions you mentioned, well, can be a reason for that. But on the other hand, preparing such a significant missile strikes means that Russian forces are all the time on standby to launch such kind of strikes.
And we've been hearing about that standby. In fact, that Russian forces were poised to further target energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Is that indeed what we are seeing right now, those promised attacks?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that every time you have some kind of, let's say, Western action against Russia, like the oil price cap that was agreed a day or two ago, you'll have immediately this kind of response. This is Putin's way of saying, actually, I'm not afraid of you. Whether he's afraid or not, that's a different matter. But he always wants to look as if he's pressing ahead.
We've been hearing also about explosions inside Russia at air bases there. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's very interesting because the explosions happened in an air base near the town of Engelsk, which is in mid-Volga region, deep in Russia. It's about 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, if not 1,000. As we know, two strategic Tu-95 bombers were hit. These are very old turboprop planes coming from, like, I think they were constructed in 1950s or something like that. They're still used by the Russian Strategic Bomber Command, and they have been used, as far as I understand, to attack Ukraine. I think the issue, or rather the target here, is not so much the planes themselves that were damaged, but definitely it is whoever struck the Russian bases shows that he or she can do it, and that those planes that target Ukraine, even if they are not very frequently used, are going to be destroyed. I think it's a very interesting symbolic strike.
Konstantin Eggert in Vilnius, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, since the start of Russia's invasion earlier this year, crossing between Russian-occupied areas and the rest of Ukraine has become difficult and dangerous. But there's one spot, about 30 kilometers south of the city of Zaporizhia, an informal corridor with police checkpoints where people can move across the front line. DW's Jan-Philipp Schultz met Ukrainians trying to flee Russian-held territory.
Just a few kilometers down there, the Russians are in charge. This checkpoint is the only place in Ukraine where people can move between the two worlds. This man is the first to leave Russian occupation today. He tells us he hung on as long as he could, but now he's going to join his wife in western Ukraine.
Crossing this line is very unpleasant for everyone. There was just no road. Everyone is scared. It was more like sailing than driving. Look at my car.
More cars arrive and everyone waits for the police to escort them to the registration center. An old Lada doesn't quite make it to the checkpoint. But it's done the most important thing. Two women join forces to get their mothers out of the Russian-controlled area.
At first, my mom didn't want to leave. We all thought this would somehow end soon, but it's not ending. And now the winter is coming. She just couldn't be there on her own. When your soul hurts so much you can't even sleep anymore, she's the most precious thing I have left.
While Oksana takes a look at the engine, her friend Alesia tells us of their horror road trip. Fighting had wrecked so many roads and bridges, those who were leaving had to pick their way through farmland.
We just cried when we saw how everything was destroyed. Afterwards, we just sat in the car and looked in silence.
Oksana has worked a miracle on her car, and they join the convoy heading for the registration center. They arrive, it's warm and there's tea. The women realize the worst is behind them.
I'm really happy now. I'm glad that I could bring my mother to a safer place and that we got here in one piece. It's been very hard, you know. I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
They have people to stay with here tonight. The plan for tomorrow is to leave the Lada and take a train west.